What if the clip everyone laughed at years ago wasn't so funny after all? Over the past 48 hours, social media has exploded after old footage of a teenage Justin Bieber spending 48 hours with Diddy resurfaced. And this time, fans aren't reacting with nostalgia, they're reacting with questions. Big ones. The kind that make people rewind interviews, rewatch red carpet moments, and ask why certain jokes suddenly feel uncomfortable. And now, with 50 Cent's second documentary reigniting conversation around power, influence, and silence in the industry, those old moments are being examined under a completely different lens. He isn't presenting courtroom evidence, he isn't issuing formal accusations, but what he is doing is reopening conversations many thought were buried. Fans are shocked, emotions are running high, comment sections are turning into battlegrounds. Some say this is overdue scrutiny, others argue it's reckless speculation. Meanwhile, the industry remains quiet.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they loved me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Is this real life? I feel crazy. The world is spinning around me. What's happening? You have 4 eyes.
So what exactly did that old 48 hours clip show? Why are people connecting it to broader conversations about mentorship, access, and control? And why does this feel bigger than just a resurfaced video? Let's break down what's being said and what's actually confirmed. For years, that clip lived online like background noise. People shared it, laughed at it, edited it into fan compilations, and moved on. It was framed as harmless celebrity culture, just another flashy moment in the early days of a teenage pop star, stepping into a world that looked larger than life. But now, with fresh conversations circulating because of 50 Cent's new documentary, that same footage feels different. Not because new proof has surfaced, not because someone filed a new charge, but because the lens has shifted. And when the lens shifts, the meaning shifts with it. The 48 hours moment is the center of this renewed debate. In the old clip,
so as soon as you turn 16, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna let you rock this every time.
Right here?
It's gonna be yours. So, let me tell you, LA, it's a little dusty, but go get the front shot.
Man.
And then out. Minute.
Woo. Okay.
Okay.
Alright, so I'm gonna be driving this next year.
Yeah, when you get 16, you come down there, you gotta, wear your seat.
I mean, I'm 15, you could ride in the passenger seat. I got my permit. Not yet.
No.
Alright,
No.
16.
You're not ready. Let's slow down. Let's slow down, Josh.
Okay.
Let's slow down, okay?
One step at a time.
But yeah, the keys is yours when you get 16. You're good to go.
I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Alright.
Then, when you get 18, you get the house. You get the mansion.
Okay. I get the mansion?
Yeah.
So where are we off to now?
And where would you like to go?
Wherever you want to go. Where are we going?
So check this out, yo. Justin, you ever seen the movie 48 Hours? Right now, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, like, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose.
very young Justin Bieber is seen around Diddy, with playful energy, jokes about the next couple of days, references to having the time of their lives, and vague comments about things that can't really be disclosed. At the time, many viewers saw it as exaggerated bravado, typical hip-hop showmanship. But today, fans are pausing on certain lines. They are rewinding. They are asking why a minor was being placed into spaces that seemed built for adults. And here is where the tone of the conversation changes. No one in this discussion is presenting courtroom evidence. No official documents are being cited in these viral posts. What is happening instead is cultural re-examination. People are saying, why did this feel normal back then? And that question is louder than ever. On social media, emotions ran high. One fan wrote, "I watched this clip 10 years ago and thought nothing of it. Now I feel uncomfortable." Another responded, "You are projecting. It was just industry networking." And suddenly the comment section turned into a battlefield. Fans are shocked, not necessarily because of something proven, but because of how differently the same footage feels in a new era. The documentary did not accuse Justin Bieber of anything. It did not present him as making claims. What it did was revisit power. It revisited influence. It revisited what access looks like when a teenager is suddenly surrounded by moguls who control opportunity. And that is where the tension lies. You have to remember the context. Justin Bieber's rise was meteoric. One viral video turned into record deals, sold-out arenas, screaming fans, and a machine that moved faster than most adults could handle. Now,
you got people in the industry that's been saying for years, this man is having sex with underage. So now the federal government is looking at that like, yo, when is somebody gonna come forward? We got this information, this alleged information, but nobody's willing to come forward. Then they go on and say, yo, Shakur Stewart mysteriously dead. Supposed to be a self-inflicted wound. Person that had everything going for him in their life. Kim Porter dead. Somebody's car gets blown up. This guy is walking around threatening other actors, people. Somebody got to get involved in it. If it ain't the state, let it be the feds. Somebody got to stop him. He lucky that God given him the opportunity to be stopped while he's alive, then have to go to hell and face that shit. He got a chance to repent now, change his life.
You mentioned minors, and a lot of people have been trying to drag Justin Bieber into this situation because there's a lot of
Imagine navigating that at 15. Imagine being told you are lucky. Imagine being told this is how the industry works. Imagine trusting everyone around you because you are still figuring out who you are. That is the emotional layer people are unpacking right now. In the resurfaced footage, there is laughter, there is joking, there are casual comments about future mansions and luxury cars. At the time, it played as aspirational. Now some viewers see imbalance, not proof of wrongdoing, but imbalance. A minor in rooms where hierarchy is clear and power flows one direction. And this is where 50 Cent's documentary enters the picture. He does not present a verdict. He does not roll out sealed files. Instead, he presents memory, available but rarely interrogated. And that approach has divided audiences. Some say he is reopening necessary conversations about mentorship and boundaries. Others argue he is amplifying speculation for dramatic effect. Behind the scenes, industry insiders have stayed mostly quiet. No dramatic statements, no public back and forth. And that silence is being interpreted in different ways. Some fans say silence means there is nothing to address. Others argue silence protects brands and business relationships. Meanwhile, old interviews are
being clipped and reshared. In one appearance years later, Justin spoke emotionally about wanting to protect younger artists from pressures he experienced. He did not accuse anyone, he did not name names, but he described anxiety, disorientation, and feeling overwhelmed during his early years. Now, fans are connecting those reflections to the resurfaced footage, asking whether the environment itself was too intense. Again, there is no confirmed link, there is only conversation. And conversation is powerful. You can feel the generational shift in how people respond. Back then, celebrity culture was often excused as wild, chaotic, over the top. Today, audiences are more sensitive to issues of age, consent, and power imbalance. So when they watch a 15-year-old joking about 48 hours in adult company, they do not just see charisma, they see vulnerability. One commentator said during a live stream, "This isn't about proving something happened, it's about asking why nobody asked questions sooner." That sentence spread across timelines like wildfire because it captures the mood perfectly. This is not a courtroom, this is a cultural audit. And cultural audits can be messy. Fans are divided. Some defend Diddy's past mentorship of young talent, pointing to long careers launched under his guidance. Others insist that mentorship should come with visible safeguards, especially when minors are involved. The family was left divided in online spaces. Even within fan communities, debates turned personal. Interview 814-1009. "You're ruining his legacy," one user wrote. Another replied, "Legacy should withstand scrutiny." While this unfolds, the documentary continues to trend. Clips circulate, reaction videos multiply. Commentators dissect tone, body language, phrasing. And every time someone says, "This feels off," someone else counters, "That's hindsight bias." What makes this moment intense is that nothing new has technically surfaced. The footage was always there. The interviews were public. The relationships were known. What has changed is timing. What has changed is the cultural climate. What has changed is how audiences process power. And power is the quiet character in this story. Power decides who gets access. Power decides who speaks. Power decides which moments become headlines and which fade into background noise. And when power is involved, scrutiny rarely feels comfortable. Right now, Justin Bieber has not publicly accused Diddy of criminal conduct. There is no official statement tying him to specific allegations. That distinction matters. What exists instead are online theories, revived interviews, and emotional reactions from fans who feel unsettled. So as you watch the clip again, as you hear the jokes and the laughter, the question isn't what happened, because that implies certainty. The real question people are asking is, why did this look normal? And that question alone has been enough to reopen everything. Because when old footage resurfaces in a new era, it doesn't just replay history, it rewrites how we interpret it. Because when old footage resurfaces in a new era, it doesn't just replay history, it rewrites how we interpret it. And that reinterpretation is exactly what is fueling the second wave of conversation now spreading across platforms. Once the clip began trending again, reaction channels wasted no time dissecting every frame. Slowed-down edits appeared within hours. Commentators zoomed in on expressions, pauses, and tone shifts. What once felt like lighthearted banter was now being described as layered, awkward, even tense. Again, no one was presenting proof of misconduct. What they were presenting was discomfort. And discomfort, when amplified by millions of viewers, becomes its own kind of headline. Fans are shocked at how divided the internet has become. One side insists this is nothing more than retroactive suspicion. You can't rewrite history based on vibes, one commenter argued during a heated livestream. It was a different time. Celebrity culture was wild. But the other side pushed back immediately. Different time doesn't mean different standards for protecting minors, someone responded, and the chat exploded. Emotions ran high because this conversation is not really about one clip. It is about what the clip represents. It represents proximity to power. It represents how fast young artists are introduced to adult environments. It represents the blurred lines between mentorship and influence. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's documentary continues to trend, not because it offers definitive answers, but because it frames these moments as part of a larger pattern. He doesn't say, "This happened." He says, "Look again." And that subtle shift in framing is what keeps the debate alive. Instead of delivering a verdict, the documentary delivers a question mark. And question marks are dangerous in celebrity culture. Industry insiders have been cautious. No dramatic public arguments. No
explosive interviews responding directly to the renewed scrutiny. Instead, there is calculated quiet. Some see that silence as strategic, others interpret it as avoidance. But silence itself becomes part of the story. A former publicist who spoke anonymously during a podcast discussion said, "When old clips resurface, the first instinct is to assess risk, not emotional risk, brand risk." That statement alone added fuel to the fire, because if brand protection comes first, where does that leave personal impact? At the center of all this is Justin Bieber, who has not inserted himself into the current debate. Years ago, he spoke openly about anxiety, about feeling overwhelmed by fame, about losing control during his early 20s. He described nights of confusion and pressure. He did not tie those experiences to one specific person or event. But now, fans are revisiting those interviews, layering them over the resurfaced footage, and drawing emotional parallels. Again, these are interpretations, not confirmed links, but interpretation drives online culture. The documentary also highlights how power structures in the industry function informally. Access is not distributed evenly. Young artists often move through networks built on relationships, not transparent systems. That means boundaries can depend heavily on who is present in the room and how assertive they are willing to be. One cultural commentator summarized it this way during a panel discussion. "The issue isn't whether something illegal happened in that clip. The issue is whether the environment was appropriate for someone that age." That distinction matters, because appropriateness is not always codified in law. It is shaped by ethics and perception. Fans who once idolized the glamorous side of celebrity life are now questioning it. Lavish homes, luxury cars, exclusive parties, these were marketed as rewards of success. But now viewers are asking who sets the rules inside those spaces, who monitors boundaries, who advocates for minors when the room is full of adults with influence. The family was left divided in fan spaces. Older fans who grew up during the height of Bieber's early fame often defend the context. He was living the dream, one wrote. Younger audiences counter that dreams should not come at the cost of safety or emotional stability. These generational perspectives clash daily in comment sections. And then there is the role of memory. Memory softens edges over time. Moments once celebrated can feel jarring under new cultural standards. It is not that the clip changed, it is that society changed. Some industry veterans argue that this re-examination risks unfairly reshaping narratives without evidence. They warn against letting suspicion replace facts. Others insist that ignoring discomfort because there is no indictment misses the point entirely. Culture evolves, one music journalist said during a televised debate, and when culture evolves, it revisits itself. Meanwhile, conspiracy theories have attempted to attach unrelated allegations to the resurfaced clip. That is where the conversation becomes dangerous. Unverified claims spread faster than context, and that is precisely why careful framing matters. There is a difference between analyzing a public video and declaring guilt. Right now, no court has tied Justin Bieber to specific criminal accusations in relation to Diddy. No official filings confirm the dramatic claims circulating online. What exists is speculation layered on top of archive footage, and speculation can easily blur into accusation if not handled responsibly. Still, the emotional undercurrent cannot be ignored. When you watch a teenager joke about spending 2 days in an adult mogul's orbit, knowing what we now understand about power imbalances in entertainment, it feels heavier. Not criminal by default, but heavier. Some fans say this moment feels like the industry is being held accountable in slow motion, not through arrests or trials, but through collective reflection. Others say it feels like reputations are being dragged through rumor without concrete proof. The truth likely sits somewhere between those extremes. What is undeniable is that the clip has become symbolic. It symbolizes how quickly a young star can be absorbed into systems built by adults. It symbolizes how fame accelerates maturity without guaranteeing protection. And it symbolizes how hindsight can transform harmless moments into loaded ones. As debates continue, new reaction videos appear daily. Influencers host roundtable discussions. Music historians contextualize the early 2010s. Legal analysts remind viewers that suspicion is not evidence. And through all of it, the central question remains unresolved. What does responsibility look like when power meets youth? Because at the end of the day, this is not just about Diddy or Justin Bieber. It is about the structure surrounding them. It is about how the industry handles mentorship.
About who ensures that young talent is shielded, not just showcased. And as the resurfaced clip continues to circulate, as the documentary keeps trending, the pressure builds. Not necessarily for a confession, not necessarily for an arrest, but for clarity. Clarity about boundaries, clarity about protection, clarity about whether the glamorized image of early fame masked vulnerabilities that were ignored. And the longer those questions linger without direct answers, the louder the conversation becomes. And the longer those questions linger without direct answers, the louder the conversation becomes. What started as a single resurfaced clip has now expanded into a wider discussion about patterns, proximity, and the emotional cost of early fame. As more people revisit interviews from that era, they are noticing how often the language of ownership and custody was casually used in promotional contexts. Words that were likely meant to signal mentorship or guidance now sound heavier under modern scrutiny. Fans are replaying old segments where jokes about guardianship and control were made for entertainment value, and they are asking whether humor sometimes masked imbalance. Again, there is no new charge attached to those clips, no official report has reframed them, but perception has shifted dramatically, and perception shapes legacy. Industry analysts have pointed out that the early 2010s operated under a different media culture. Interviews were looser, shock value drove clicks, outrageous comments were often rewarded with laughter rather than critique. But that context does not erase today's discomfort, it simply explains why fewer people question things at the time. One radio host recently commented, "Back then, celebrity culture celebrated chaos. Now we question it." That sentence captured the evolution perfectly. What once felt edgy now feels risky. What once felt bold now feels fragile. In the documentary, 50 Cent leans into this shift. He does not make definitive claims about specific acts involving Justin Bieber. Instead, he suggests that the industry normalized environments that deserved more oversight. He frames his narrative around power structures rather than individual events, and that framing has intensified the debate. Critics argue that revisiting these moments without direct evidence invites speculation. Supporters argue that waiting for formal charges before questioning culture is how harmful patterns persist. Fans are shocked at how deeply divided reactions have become. Meanwhile, conversations about mentorship are front and center. What does responsible mentorship look like for a 15-year-old artist? Should minors be limited to clearly structured professional spaces rather than informal social environments? Who is accountable if boundaries feel blurred even if no law is technically broken? These are complex questions and they do not fit neatly into headlines. But social media does not do nuance well. So instead, short clips circulate with dramatic captions, context gets trimmed, emotion gets amplified. The family was left divided in online fandoms. Some longtime supporters of both artists feel protective, insisting that speculation damages reputations unfairly. Others feel protective of the idea of young artists in general, arguing that scrutiny protects future talent. One viral comment read, "If nothing happened, then transparency should clear everything up." Another responded, "You can't demand transparency over rumors."
The tension between those two positions defined the moment. At the same time, broader conversations about the music industry's history are resurfacing. Past stories of young performers navigating adult-controlled systems are being re-examined, not as confirmed scandals, but as cautionary tales. Documentaries in recent years have already shifted how audiences view celebrity guardianship and management. So when an old clip surfaces showing a minor and powerful company, it does not exist in isolation. It exists within that broader cultural memory. What makes this especially emotional is Justin Bieber's later openness about mental health struggles. He has spoken publicly about burnout, about feeling lost, about questioning his own identity during peak fame. He never framed those experiences as direct accusations against specific individuals in this context, but fans now connect those admissions to early exposure to high-pressure environments. Again, connection is not confirmation, but it fuels empathy. One music therapist speaking during an online panel said, "When a teenager is immersed in adult spaces, even without overt wrongdoing, the psychological impact can be significant." That perspective added another layer to the debate. The conversation is shifting from legal definitions to emotional consequences. Meanwhile, Diddy's broader controversies unrelated to this specific clip have added weight to the discussion. When a public figure faces scrutiny in one area,
audiences tend to revisit everything. That is not proof of connected behavior. It is simply how public perception operates. Reputation colors interpretation. Some defenders argue that revisiting unrelated footage in light of separate allegations creates unfair association. Others counter that patterns are only visible when you look at the full picture. And so the debate continues, fueled not by new documents, but by cultural tension. In entertainment media, narrative timing is everything. 50 Cent's documentary arrived at a moment when audiences are already sensitive to stories about power imbalance. That timing magnified its impact. Had it been released years earlier, the reaction might have been different. Behind the scenes, public relations teams are likely monitoring every trending hashtag. Silence does not necessarily mean guilt or fear. Sometimes it means avoiding amplifying rumors. Sometimes it means waiting for the news cycle to move on. But as long as viewers continue clicking, the cycle keeps spinning. You can see how layered this has become. It is no longer just about one video. It is about industry culture. It is about whether humor can unintentionally normalize imbalance. It is about whether mentorship systems need clearer boundaries. And the longer the conversation stays unresolved, the more symbolic that 48 hours clip becomes. Some fans say it now represents a turning point in how audiences treat celebrity power. Others believe it is being overanalyzed beyond its original intent. Both positions coexist, and both are loud. What is clear is that cultural standards evolve faster than archived footage. Videos captured in one era are replayed under another, and when they are, they often feel unfamiliar. So as the documentary continues trending and debates intensify, the story remains rooted in interpretation. No official body has confirmed the dramatic claims circulating in comment sections. No court has attached new findings to that resurfaced clip, but the emotional temperature is high. Because at its core, this is about trust. Trust in mentors. Trust in the systems guiding young talent. Trust that visibility does not replace protection. And when trust is questioned, even without direct proof of wrongdoing, the ripple effects are enormous. And when trust is questioned, even without direct proof of wrongdoing, the ripple effects are enormous. Because once the audience begins looking at power differently, everything connected to that power gets re-examined. The conversation has now moved beyond that single clip and into something more layered. People are asking how many young artists entered similar spaces without anyone documenting the emotional impact. They are questioning whether the entertainment world has always relied on charisma to soften imbalance, and they are debating whether fame itself can disguise vulnerability. One entertainment reporter recently said during a live stream, "We're not watching a scandal unfold, we're watching a cultural recalibration." That statement resonated widely, because what's happening right now feels less like exposure and more like reassessment. The documentary amplified that reassessment by framing access as influence. It suggested that proximity to powerful figures accelerates careers, but also creates dependency. Not dependency proven in legal terms, but dependency in opportunity. When a teenager's next step relies on maintaining favor with adults who control platforms, how freely can boundaries be asserted? Again, this is not an accusation, it is a structural question. In old interviews, you can see the excitement in a young Justin Bieber's face, the thrill of being included, the energy of someone living a dream that millions imagined. But you can also see how quickly he was immersed in adult-coded humor and spaces. Viewers now watch those same interviews with a more cautious lens. One fan posted, "He looks like a kid trying to keep up." Another replied, "He was confident and thriving." Both interpretations are possible. Both interpretations are shaped by current cultural awareness. The emotional conflict at the center of this debate is subtle but powerful. On one side, there is nostalgia for an era when celebrity moments felt spontaneous and unfiltered.
On the other side, there is a desire to protect minors from environments that may prioritize spectacle over safety. Fans are shocked at how deeply this tension divides them. The family was left divided, not in literal households, but in online communities that once united over shared admiration. Now, threads that once celebrated music releases are filled with debates about ethics and boundaries. Meanwhile, commentary channels continue to dissect tone and body language from the resurfaced footage. Some argue that jokes about having custody for 48 hours were clearly exaggerated entertainment language. Others argue that even exaggerated language reflects how casually power was discussed. Legal analysts
have weighed in, remind viewers that uncomfortable optics do not equal confirmed crimes. They stress that speculation must remain distinct from evidence. That reminder has not slowed the emotional intensity. It has only sharpened the lines between interpretation and proof. Another layer complicating the moment is how fame can freeze people in time. Justin Bieber is no longer that 15-year-old. He is an adult who has built a family, taken breaks from touring, and publicly worked on mental health. Yet the resurfaced clip locks him into that earlier chapter. Viewers are essentially watching a child version of a global star and asking whether that child had adequate protection. That question does not accuse, it reflects concern. Some music historians have noted that child performers have always walked this tightrope. From earlier decades to modern pop culture, young talent often moves quickly into adult-dominated systems. What has changed is audience awareness. Documentaries and memoirs have educated viewers about behind-the-scenes pressure. So when older footage resurfaces, it is interpreted through that knowledge. 50 Cent's documentary taps into that awareness without delivering a formal indictment. He revisits moments that were already public and places them in a broader conversation about silence and loyalty. Critics say this framing invites suspicion without resolution. Supporters argue that it invites accountability without overstepping. Either way, the strategy worked. The clip is trending. Discussions are multiplying. The emotional stakes feel high even though no new charges have been attached to this specific footage. And perhaps that is the most telling part of this story. The power of the moment lies not in confirmed wrongdoing but in collective discomfort. Discomfort that certain environments might not have been ideal for someone so young. Discomfort that celebrity culture once prioritized spectacle over reflection. As more viewers watch the clip again, the tone shifts from laughter to analysis. Pauses are dissected, facial expressions are scrutinized, humor is evaluated for subtext. In reality, some of that analysis may project modern standards onto past behavior, but projection itself reveals how far cultural expectations have moved. Industry veterans continue to urge caution, reminding audiences that hindsight can distort intention. At the same time, advocates for youth protection argue that hindsight can also reveal blind spots. So the debate persists. What does accountability look like when no direct accusation has been made in this context? What does responsibility mean when the issue is environment rather than incident? And how should audiences balance skepticism with fairness? These questions linger as the documentary remains in conversation and the resurfaced clip circulates across platforms. In the end, this moment feels less like an expose and more like a mirror reflecting how society now views power, mentorship, and youth in the spotlight. Whether the mirror reveals something troubling or simply evolving standards depends largely on the viewer. And as long as that mirror remains in front of the public, the conversation will not fade quietly. Because once audiences begin questioning structure instead of individuals, the focus expands far beyond one resurfaced moment. Now the dialogue is shifted toward accountability in a broader sense. Commentators are asking whether the music industry has ever truly had clear, enforceable guardrails for minors navigating adult fame. Some insiders argue that protections exist on paper but become flexible in practice when money and momentum are involved. Others insist that strict oversight has always been part of major label operations. The truth likely varies case by case, which makes sweeping conclusions dangerous. Still, the emotional current is undeniable. Fans are shocked not just by what they are seeing, but by how differently they feel watching it now. One viewer commented, "I used to think this was cool, now it just feels complicated." That single word, complicated, captures the mood perfectly. Because the story is layered, it is not a clear villain and hero narrative. It is about perception, power, and the weight of hindsight. Meanwhile, defenders of both artists argue that context matters. They remind audiences that celebrity interviews are often theatrical, that playful exaggeration is part of entertainment branding, that the early 2010s had a different tone entirely. They caution against reading menace into humor simply because cultural standards have tightened. On the other side, critics maintain that humor does not erase imbalance. They argue that when minors are placed in high-powered adult environments, optics alone deserve scrutiny. They emphasize that asking questions is not the same as declaring guilt. That distinction becomes central to the entire debate. In online spaces, the family was left divided between those calling for deeper industry transparency and those warning against rumor-driven narratives. Emotions ran high in live-stream chats as creators debated what responsible commentary looks like. Some insisted that focusing on patterns protects future artists. Others argue that constantly revisiting old footage without new evidence risks unfairly shaping public memory. 50 Cent's documentary continues to hover over the conversation. His approach is subtle but pointed. Instead of stating conclusions, he revisits tone and context. He suggests that certain environments operated without meaningful challenge for years. Whether that suggestion is fair or speculative depends on perspective, but it undeniably keeps attention fixed on systemic issues.
At the same time, Justin Bieber has not stepped forward to directly address this renewed scrutiny tied to the resurfaced clip. His silence, like everyone else's, is interpreted in multiple ways. Some say it signals that there is nothing new to say. Others argue that speaking could unintentionally validate speculation. Public relations strategy often favors restraint in moments like this. Silence can allow a news cycle to exhaust itself. But in a digital age where archived footage lives forever, cycles do not disappear. They resurface, sometimes years later, with new meaning. And meaning is what this moment revolves around. There is no court filing connected to this specific clip confirming dramatic claims. There is no official statement redefining it as evidence of misconduct. But there is collective reflection, and reflection can reshape narrative without changing fact. Music historians note that pop culture regularly revisits itself during periods of cultural shift. What once seemed aspirational can later seem excessive. What once felt glamorous can later appear reckless. This process is not necessarily about exposing secrets. It is about reinterpreting norms. In this case, the norm being re-examined is how quickly young talent is absorbed into adult celebrity circles. Who is present to ensure boundaries? Who is responsible for safeguarding well-being? Who decides what is appropriate for a 15-year-old rising star? These questions do not accuse a single individual of confirmed wrongdoing in this context. They interrogate structure. And structure rarely offers easy answers. Some fans argue that the industry learned from past decades and implemented better protections over time. Others counter that reforms often arrive only after controversy forces change. Whether this resurfaced clip becomes a catalyst for new guidelines remains to be seen. For now, it functions primarily as a symbol of how fame accelerates youth, a symbol of how power dynamics can be invisible until society chooses to look closer, a symbol of how public memory evolves. What makes the moment intense is the emotional investment involved. Justin Bieber's career has been deeply personal for many fans who grew up alongside his music. Seeing him at 15 in a context that now feels complicated triggers protective instincts. Similarly, supporters of Diddy view the resurfaced scrutiny as an attack on legacy built over decades. When legacy and protection collide, emotions run high. Yet despite the intensity, the core remains clear. There is no confirmed legal conclusion tied to this specific resurfaced clip establishing criminal conduct. There is conversation, there is analysis, there is discomfort. And sometimes discomfort alone reshapes how history is viewed. As reaction videos continue and debate persists, the broader industry watches carefully. Because this is not just about two names. It is about whether audiences will continue revisiting past celebrity culture with modern expectations. The resurfaced 48 hours footage may eventually fade from trending pages, but the larger questions it sparked about power, mentorship, and youth in entertainment are unlikely to disappear entirely. And that is where the main body of this story settles. Not on a dramatic verdict, not on a confirmed accusation, but on an unresolved cultural question that continues to echo long after the clip stops playing. And that is where this entire conversation leaves us. Not with a verdict, not with a headline that says case closed, but with a mirror held up to an industry that many people once accepted without question. The resurfaced 48 hours clip did not suddenly create new charges. It did not come with sealed documents or courtroom confirmations tied to that specific footage. What it did was reopen a conversation about power, about mentorship, about what responsibility looks like when a teenager steps into rooms filled with adults who control opportunity. Fans are shocked at how differently the same moment feels today. Emotions ran high across timelines because this isn't just about nostalgia anymore. It's
about perspective. It's about whether the culture that celebrated chaos years ago should be re-examined under modern standards. Some viewers believe this is necessary accountability. Others believe it is over-analysis fueled by hindsight. The truth, the discussion is still unfolding. So now we want to hear from you. When you watch that old clip, what do you see? Harmless industry banter, or a moment that deserves deeper reflection? Do you think revisiting these archives protects future artists, or do you think it unfairly reshapes past narratives without confirmed proof? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Keep it respectful, keep it thoughtful, because these conversations matter more when they stay grounded in facts and awareness. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure you like this video so more people can see the full context. Subscribe for more deep dives into entertainment stories that are trending right now, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we unpack what's really being said versus what's actually confirmed. This story may not have a final answer yet, but the conversation, that's just getting started.